Daniel de Santis was born in 1987 in Lecce, Italy. He was the eldest of 3 siblings in an affluent, close-knit family. His love for soccer was evident from an early age, and after completing his law degree in 2009, he built a successful career as a soccer referee. He officiated over 130 matches, steadily rising through the ranks to officiate in Serie C and B. Alongside his professional success, Daniel had a happy personal life with his fiancée, Eleonora Manta, who was 3 years younger than him. They were in love and had plans to marry in the future. Eleonora Manta was born in Milan in 1990. She grew up in a modest household as the youngest of 3 siblings. Her parents divorced during her childhood. Her father became distant to them, which left her mother to raise the children alone. From an early age, Eleonora was passionate about sports and dance, the same interests that she shared with Daniel. The two met in 2019 and quickly formed a loving and trusting relationship. Friends and family described them as a perfect match, with a harmonious bond and no conflict between them. Eleonora had always dreamed of studying law, and in 2020, she was accepted into a prestigious university program focused on law and international relations. Excited by the opportunity, she began her studies that fall. Later that summer, Eleonora and Daniel decided to take the next step in their relationship and moved in together. Daniel had a spacious apartment in a sought-after residential area and asked Eleonora to move in with him. As Eleonora settled into her new home, they made plans for their future, including their upcoming wedding. Life was falling into place for the couple, with everything seeming perfect, until tragedy struck. Daniel was set to officiate a major match in late September 2020, but tragically, he would not make it to that day. On the evening of September 21st, Daniel and Eleonora were enjoying a quiet dinner. Around 9:45 p.m., their peaceful evening was interrupted. Neighbors heard disturbing sounds, cries for help, and a struggle that lasted for 10 minutes. Alarmed by the noise, they quickly called the police, though they could not fully comprehend the severity of what was happening. At around 10 p.m., a young boy walking his dog across the street witnessed a man rushing out of the building. The boy was startled and noticed the man's unsettling expression and the knife he was holding. Fortunately, the man fled when he saw others nearby, and several witnesses caught a glimpse of his face before he disappeared. When authorities arrived, it was clear that it was too late to save the couple. Daniel was found in the stairwell, lying in a pool of blood, and Eleonora was discovered inside the hallway, face down. Her clothes and hair were drenched in blood. Tragically, both she and Daniel had already passed away when emergency responders arrived. The cause of death was later confirmed to be multiple stab wounds, leading to massive blood loss. There were 38 stab wounds on Daniel and 37 on Eleonora. The brutality of the attack raised many questions, especially since nothing appeared to be stolen from the apartment. Cash was left behind, and Eleonora's expensive jewelry gifted by Daniel for their engagement remained untouched, leading investigators to rule out robbery as a motive. The brutal nature of the crime suggested a personal motive, leading detectives to consider revenge, such as a love triangle. However, after speaking with friends and family, it was clear Daniel and Eleonora had a strong, loving relationship, ruling out infidelity. Still, the possibility of unrequited feelings remained a potential lead. At the crime scene, investigators discovered several unusual items that didn't seem to belong to the victims. Among them were zip ties, bottles of bleach, and a blood-stained stocking. These objects appeared to have been brought by the attacker. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the stocking contained traces of Daniel's blood and an unknown man's DNA. It seemed the attacker had used the stocking to conceal his identity, but it was likely removed during the struggle. A chilling drawing was found on the stocking, which was a sad face drawn with a black marker. Eyewitnesses, including a young boy who saw the assailant flee, provided details for a composite sketch. While the child offered useful information about the suspect's appearance and backpack, the sketch did not lead to immediate identification. During their investigation, detectives learned from witnesses that Eleonora had been heard pleading with someone to stop, repeatedly shouting a name that sounded like Andrea. This clue led them to investigate every man named Andrea connected to the couple. Their first suspect was Andrea Fermati, a former acquaintance of Eleonora from her teenage years. Though their interactions were limited, they remained connected on social media. Investigators speculated he may have harbored feelings for her and, upon learning of her engagement, became jealous. However, he had a strong alibi. He was in Rome on the night of the crime. Next, they looked into Andrea Martinelli, Daniel's longtime friend. Detectives suspected he might have secretly been in love with Eleonora and resented Daniel. While phone records showed they had spoken hours before the murder, Martinelli's alibi was solid, confirmed by multiple witnesses. The focus then shifted to Andrea Rodio, a more recent acquaintance who resembled the composite sketch. Despite being detained and identified by witnesses, everyone ruled him out. Rodio's alibi was also verified, and he was released. With no further leads pointing to anyone named Andrea, detectives began to reconsider whether Eleonora's shouts had been directed at someone else. During another follow-up search at the crime scene, investigators found a crucial piece of evidence previously missed. Hidden beneath a shoe rack was a folded paper, seemingly dropped by the assailant. It appeared to be torn from a student's notebook, and its hasty, handwritten notes detailed a step-by-step plan for committing the crime. The instructions included tying up the victims with the zip ties found earlier, showing the attacker's methodical and premeditated approach. This new discovery revealed the attack was not unplanned but a carefully plotted act. However, the plan was only partially carried out. The attacker likely abandoned key elements due to the couple's fierce resistance, as well as the noise and commotion heard by neighbors. The note revealed the attacker had spent time observing the apartment, ensuring the couple was alone before making a move. Other details included using a nylon stocking as a disguise, changing clothes afterward, and using bleach to clean up. Yet, the note didn't provide any insight into the motive behind such a brutal crime. At the bottom was a map of the area, marking surveillance cameras and possible escape routes. Despite the meticulous planning, the attacker's escape route was poorly executed. Witnesses saw the suspect fleeing, and surveillance footage helped trace some of the path. But the investigation didn't make significant progress. Days passed with little new information, until September 26th, when a young man walked into the police station. He believed the composite sketch of the suspect resembled his former classmate, Antonio DeMarco, a 21-year-old medical student. Antonio had been absent from university for days, raising suspicions. It was revealed that Antonio had once rented a room in Daniel's apartment but had moved out months before. Antonio was described as quiet and studious. Most didn't even remember he had once lived in the building. He kept to himself, avoided socializing, and had no known relationships. His behavior had always seemed normal, making him the last person anyone would suspect. But his absence after the crime and the sketch resemblance made him a person of interest. Police officers quickly obtained handwriting samples from Antonio's university records to compare with the note found at the crime scene. The forensic analysis confirmed that the writing matched perfectly. Detectives had difficulty tracing his whereabouts after he left Daniel's apartment, but they eventually located his mother, who provided his current address. Antonio was living just 3 blocks away from the crime scene, renting a room in a shared house with 2 other students. The lease was under another student's name, and the rent was split among them. On September 28, 2020, a week after the murders, Antonio was arrested outside a comic book store. He was buying a magazine when officers approached. Antonio showed no surprise or resistance, instead giving a wry smile and asking how long it had taken them to find him. From the start, he did not deny his involvement. He answered questions with eerie detachment, showing no remorse and even recalling the events in chilling detail. He mentioned seeing a young boy walking his dog and admitted to considering silencing him but decided against it as he was in a hurry. His cold demeanor and lack of regret stood in stark contrast to his reputation as a promising medical student, known for being shy yet diligent. Detectives turned to his mother to understand more about Antonio's background. She revealed that Antonio had always been different. As a child, he struggled socially, avoiding friends and spending most of his time alone. He would get upset if interrupted during solitary activities like drawing or working on projects. Concerned about his increasing isolation, his mother sought professional help. Antonio was diagnosed with multiple mental health disorders, including socialization issues. Despite his challenges, he excelled academically, particularly in science and math, eventually gaining entry into medical school. Antonio's mental health continued to decline, with increasing withdrawal into the world of comic books. He was prescribed medication for his condition, but his mother explained that he rarely followed the prescribed dosage, often skipping doses and then taking excessive amounts when he did. A psychiatrist had recommended Antonio keep a journal to express his emotions, and his mother later provided it to investigators. The entries started innocently enough, with Antonio writing about his desire to live a normal life, making friends, dating, and fitting in. But as the journal progressed, it revealed a darker, more disturbing side to his thoughts and feelings, shedding light on his troubled mind. While attending university, Antonio had lived with his mother until he found an affordable room for rent near campus. The apartment where Daniel lived was conveniently located close to his university, so Antonio quickly responded to the listing. He was a quiet and responsible tenant, paying his rent on time and staying out of trouble. During his time there, Antonio seemed to view Daniel as someone he could potentially befriend. However, things changed when Eleonora started spending more time at the apartment, especially after they moved in together. As their relationship grew stronger, Antonio's feelings shifted, and he began to feel more alienated. When Daniel and Eleonora decided to live together permanently, Daniel politely asked Antonio to move out. Although Antonio didn't express his resentment outwardly, he took the request deeply to heart. He claimed he had already been looking for a new place near the hospital where he was interning. Despite this, the longer he stayed, the more his feelings of bitterness festered. Antonio's journal entries began to reveal darker thoughts, including detailed fantasies about harming the couple. These writings, he later claimed in court, were his way of releasing frustration and preventing himself from acting on his anger, though the intensity of his fantasies only grew over time. After Antonio moved out, his journal became increasingly methodical. He began outlining detailed plans to harm Daniel and Eleonora, including how he would enter their home and torment them. Before leaving the apartment, Antonio had secretly made an extra copy of the apartment key, which he never returned. His journal made it clear that his hatred for the couple had deepened, and he prepared for the attack with chilling precision. He wore gloves to leave no trace of his fingerprints at the scene. On the night of the crime, Antonio carefully executed his plan. He wore plain, inconspicuous clothes and used a nylon stocking as a mask to disguise his identity. He carried a backpack filled with a change of clothes, bleach for cleaning up, and zip ties to restrain the couple. Antonio had taken time to scout out escape routes and avoid being caught on CCTV. When he arrived at the apartment building, Antonio sat outside for a while, listening intently to ensure that Daniel and Eleonora were alone. Once he confirmed that there were no other people present, he entered the building, climbed the stairs to the second floor, and lingered outside their door, listening for any sounds. After a few minutes, he used the spare key he had kept to unlock the door quietly. The couple was enjoying a quiet dinner and were abruptly interrupted by the intruder. Daniel, startled, asked the intruder who he was and what he wanted. The intruder remained silent. Daniel quickly got up to force the intruder out of the apartment, but he was met with multiple stabs on his chest and abdomen. Eleonora, witnessing the brutal assault on her fiancé, cried out and lunged at the attacker. She too was immediately stabbed, the blade piercing her shoulder. Though wounded, Daniel, in a moment of clarity, ripped the nylon stocking from the intruder's face, immediately recognizing him. It's thought that Eleonora, in her terror, began screaming the intruder's name, though later this would be misinterpreted. The attack intensified. Antonio, wanting to silence Eleonora, threw her to the floor and continued to attack her. Daniel, despite his own wounds, staggered towards the doorway, desperately attempting to escape and call for help. The intruder pursued him, delivering the final, fatal stabs, leaving Daniel with no chance of survival. Afterward, Antonio returned to Eleonora, who had crawled to the hallway, and with relentless brutality, stabbed her repeatedly until she stopped moving. After the crime, Antonio attempted to clean the scene with bleach, but quickly realized he didn't have enough time. He knew that the neighbors had likely heard the screams and had already contacted the police. In a hurry, he changed into fresh clothes, left behind the zip ties, and left the apartment. During the chaos, a paper with his plan accidentally fell out of his backpack. Forensic evidence, including DNA on the nylon stocking he had used as a mask, connected Antonio to the crime. He did not deny his involvement and described the events showing no remorse. He expressed frustration that the noise and panic had disrupted his original plan. Antonio's defense team claimed he was mentally unfit to stand trial, prompting an evaluation. However, the assessment concluded that he was fully aware of his actions. Investigators learned that the crime had been premeditated, and Antonio admitted that he had been angered by the couple's happiness. He shared that he had planned to cause them harm before killing them, though the situation didn't go as expected. In court, they showed a drawing of a sad face on the mask Antonio wore. He said he wanted to draw the same face on the wall with their blood, like a signature. He even said he wanted to kill again because he liked it and was considering using this symbol in the future as well. On June 7, 2021, Antonio DeMarco was found guilty of 2 premeditated murders. The court determined that he posed a significant risk and sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more true crime content. See you next time.